In order?
Yes, please.
Roll call.
Alderman Pecorelli,
Here.
Alderman Craig,
Here.
John Howard,
Here.
and Mira Krasovic. Here. And for the pledge.
There you go,
I
Danielle.
pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brother Yusuf.
Okay. So we have some citizens in attendance today.
I may not stay the whole meeting, if that's okay.
So what say you?
So I don't think we have any citizen comment period. We just have, and I forgot your name.
My name is Maria M. I am first and foremost a citizen of Franklin. But I do serve on the library board of trustees, currently as president, but I'm not necessarily,
Just here to listen.
Yep,
Then we have
absolutely.
Are there
Alderman
any
Hassan and Alderwoman Reynolds. Like,
Okay. Are there any citizens here for comments? No? Okay, and we'll go to minutes. Anybody have any questions or issues with the minutes?
No issues. Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as published. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, review of the purchase part of the program.
nope, is
Those
that last
are the
month's
minutes.
budget? Oh yeah, sorry, those are the minutes. So the first item is the mayor's
I see.
recommended budget.
Yes. Okay. Mayor's recommended budget and initiation.
So I don't know, Mayor, do you want to start and then I can jump into some of the information?
Yes, I will start. I'm not going to go into the statistical parts. Danielle can do that and talk about actual numbers. But we are poised this budget with equal, if not greater, challenges than last budget. Big part of that is the net new construction dynamic. Danielle can touch on that. Increases in health insurance. Looking at now new contract, which may be settled with the police department. That's going to be another big drain on the budget that's coming up. Challenges. And I'm gonna stop at this point because I just want the goal of tonight and the goal of inviting all the electeds, all the alders, and verifying that the bad key notice was done properly was to bring the electeds forward right now to know that these are the problems that we're going to have. We are going to have some major challenges. How are we going to get through this? Not that we wait now, all of a sudden we wake up in September and now what are we going to do? So that's why we are really hitting this now and being as proactive and as transparent as we can to make sure everybody knows that these are the challenges. How we're going to solve them, no idea. But we're going to have to put our heads together and you know, the goal is to, you know, provide excellent fire, DPW, police, make sure that we've got everything good with that, make sure we are not losing anybody because of that, trying to keep those core services intact and balance the budget. So Danielle or Kelly, either one, I'll yield at this point.
I can start. So I put this initial memo together to really get going on how the 2026 budget is beginning to look, some of the challenges that are very evident that we will be facing going into the 2026 budget.
Excuse me, Danielle, is this the memo that you sent to Jennifer? Or is it a separate memo just to
No, this is just in the packet.
Okay,
So-
sorry.
That's
All right,
But I'll touch on each point. So
that's fine.
So first and foremost, it's, a struggle for us to balance the budget with all of the expected inflation and the limited amount of revenues that we have to work with. Number two, levy limits. That is our number one biggest restraint that we have. This year, and I wanted to put this together immediately because 2 weeks ago I got some preliminary net new construction numbers from the assessors. However, I have a little bit of a good update following this. After the assessor gave me the preliminary net new construction numbers, which I have here as 94, almost 95 million, which will equal out to be about 1.46% increase to the overall budget. There was some adjustments that were made at the end of last year that will be applied to this year. So I was in contact with the Department of Revenue, and just, was that yesterday, Mayor, or I think I got the email? Yeah, yesterday. I got some clarification from the Department of Revenue, who is working with the City of Franklin on our values overall. And they projected that we will be getting a correction applied. Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, please. The 1.463 you said was an increase to the budget.
It's an increase to the overall amount that we can increase our budget by.
So is that like revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
It's tax revenue.
Okay.
So the
thank you.
levy limit is the amount of tax revenue that we can now collect from residents. We are able to increase our annual levy limit by typically two factors. One is net new construction growth. So whatever the percentage is, we increase that. It equivalates to a specific amount. And then you can increase your debt service depending on how much debt you have. So in an annual year, you would calculate how much principal and interest you anticipate to pay in that following year, and you can claim up to that amount on taxes, essentially. Yep. So, and that's why I put in the stars right under that. So a 1.46% increase in net new construction equates out to roughly a $300,000 increase to the overall levy. And I'll touch base on that in a minute. But with the adjustment from the Department of Revenue, it'll be a one-time adjustment for 2025's levy limit worksheet. It's an additional wants to do the math for me. 28, 38, 39, about $39.3 million. So it ends up raising our percentage from 1.46 to 2.07. And that is the sheets that I just handed out to you. Essentially, these sheets are how I calculate our levy limit and how it gets applied to the different funds, the library fund, street improvement fund, the general fund, and then the debt service fund.
I'm still not sure what that means. Are you recommending, or am I getting ahead of myself?
Well, we can jump right into it. Pull up this first sheet, or the first two pieces that I gave you. It would be the most typed up column just says preliminary 2025. So what this essentially shows, and this is the 2-page levy limit worksheet in here. So I file this annually. So what they do is they take the prior year's levy, which was the $23.8 million. We add the personal property tax, minus out the debt service that we claimed last year, which would bring our adjusted levy to the $23.3 million. So that is starting 2025, we have $23.3 million to work with. That means we can tax our residents up to $23.3 million. Then you add the net new construction. So on this first document, I'm showing you that with the 1.463 increase on net new construction, that brings us to $23.7 million. Then we have to, again, take out the personal property aid. We're gonna add in the debt service. Now, again, that debt service amount can be any number up to the amount of principal and interest that we pay. You wanna believe in a perfect world, the maximum levy, your debt service amount at the top, which on your sheet you'll see is the $813,000, should, to meet your maximum levy, it should equal the bottom debt service number at 1.1 million. So we essentially give our taxpayers a little bit of a break by not claiming the full amount. If we did, the tax rate would be higher. So that number can be played with, which is kind of how we adjust. We play with that number depending on the overall budget, right? We see how much do we have, how much is our overall budget, how much does the city need to operate, and that number is the number that we can kind of fluctuate to get us to a comfortable level as far as the overall tax rate goes, and then the tax levy. So in this scenario, not really changing anything except just adding the net new construction. Our maximum levy that we can apply to the taxpayers is $24.2 million. So that is only a $341,000 increase to our budget amongst all areas: general fund, library, capital, debt service. To me, that's a really big concern. We could just jump over to the other two documents that I provided. So the same column, but with the actual correction, so the net new construction correction. The increase to net new construction allows us to levy more, but it does put a little bit more of a burden on the taxpayers because the assessed value doesn't change. So it's not more evenly distributed amongst the taxpayers. So that 2.7% net new construction increase it gives us another $130,000. So then our levy increase is about $480,000 that we can apply to the tax. So once you get those numbers, again, these are preliminary. I don't know how much they'll change. It'll essentially it'll be determined after the Department of Revenue generates their equalized values. And then overall, after board of review, statement of assessment, all that stuff. So luckily this year I can say with certainty that we will have more finalized numbers way sooner than we did last year. It won't be November. Should be probably within the next 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. Usually the last week of July, first week of August, I get preliminary numbers from the Department of Revenue. The assessors won't follow too far after that. So looking at the correction one is the one that we'll really want to hone in on. The preliminary one with the correction.
Thank you.
So the overall struggle that I think the city and the council is going to have to be concerned with in the finance committee is if we raise taxes by the amount of net new construction we have, like I said, that's roughly $480,000. What is that shift going to look like? It's going to take some time to determine that, right? The library board will have to figure out their budget. The city will have to figure out our budget and how much the city needs to operate. We won't be able to change debt service because that amount is the amount that we need to pay our debt. We can't change the 1.14. But again, the shift of we want to add some more to the capital funds. Do we want to take some away? Do we want to give some more to the library? Do we want to hold back? Do we want to increase the amount of percentage that we're giving to employees? Do we want to start cutting some operational services or expenses? I mean, those are some of the challenges that we're going to have to work through because $480,000 is not going to do it.
Can I ask a question? How did we get to this? This is something that could have been prevented that we could watch for, not understanding a lot in the finance.
This is like years and years in the making.
Yeah, it's not just a city of Franklin issue. It's a very statewide issue. Levy limit restraints are something that has just boomed. The government is not giving out as much money as they used to. Mm-hmm. And then overall, it's the amount of growth that the city has. So we've had over the last couple of years, less commercial, more residential. The city really needs to push commercial development in order to increase that net new construction number. Go ahead.
Is it even, well, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, I'm hearing that the increased amount of residential construction is putting a strain on the city.
I wouldn't say it's a strain,
Well,
right? But the amount of residential, the amount of value that the residential brings versus one
What they require.
whole commercial building could equal 100 homes.
okay.
And I will say I'm so happy to share any information anybody wants. I just wasn't going to put it all in the packet. But the assessors did give me overall a parcel list, right? So I said, what does this 94 million equate to? I want to know what big developments were included. And there was only a couple, right? I mean, only about $30 million of the $94 million was commercial. The rest was residential. There was, oh, John, we talked about this, sorry. It was Pillar Ford.
To list the, yeah.
Yeah.
So was Hiller, the new warehouse building at Hiller Ford was like 1.4 million. That apartment development on 27th Street, it's a high-end
Five
apartment
Seasons.
development, was just very nice. That was one of them. Carmex.
CarMax, that was the biggest one, 23 million or something like that. There was what, 5 or 6 properties. There wasn't.
There were 5 or 6 that they mentioned, but those are the big doggers.
Correct.
But one thing, since we're talking about the assessments and the assessor, when we met yesterday, one of the positives is that the reevaluation or the evaluation updates were done last year. They're not going to be done this year. So whatever was set last year, we're not going to have that this year because it's been righted. The ship has been righted, and now we move forward. That was a big deal. It was a huge deal. A lot to do with that, so that's a good thing.
Correct. So, just real quick, looking back at this spreadsheet, what I wanted to point out is the second page that I provided. And I know this page is going to be a really big sticking point. And I can update this in 100 different ways, depending on what our budget looks like. But overall, at this rate, like I said, if we only increase our budget by net new construction, the city is overall looking at a 5.1% tax increase.
That's hard to swallow, especially with the school referendum.
Yeah.
And the challenge comes from, again, the assessed value. I have preliminary numbers, so it's hard to really hone in on that. But not having the assessed value change over the amount of net new construction increase, that's where difference is. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask earlier, is slowing down the new construction residential realistic? Has that been done before so they can at some point even out a little bit or balance? I know when I sat on finance when I was in New Alder, that was discussed back at that time, that we had to really be careful on watching commercial versus residential.
I would say that in almost all of our development meetings, that has to be one of the comments that is brought up the most, is that the city should move forward with looking at commercial development, industrial development, manufacturing versus residential, to get that net new construction number up, get the assessed values up. Yes, I would say that should be a top priority when we talk about growth with the city.
On that point, though, it's a realistic point she brings up, but I guess the bigger reality is you've got a lot of people that want to come here, build here, live here, raise a family here, and that's the balancing act we've got to perform because this is a very desirable community, and we don't want to shift from that. We want to make sure they get the services they want to build here. We just have to somehow be able to capitalize on that a little more, and as far as that goes, but that's a good reality to have. That people want to live here and come here, we don't balance that. But it can't be balanced with a 5% increase.
You really I mean, even if we stayed at the rate of residential that we're at, you just need commercial side to offset. Like slowing it down may not get you the full result you're looking
Correct.
for, right? Because
True.
slowing it down is still going to reduce your net new construction.
You're not having any or
Right.
a minimal amount.
Yeah,
Like I
there's
said,
there's a balance there because there's the service side, right? There's a bunch of this that is, I'll call it fixed, right? There's things that the city has to provide. There's that fixed part, and then there's like a variable piece in there where we can make some adjustments. But the variable piece is very small, and so for the size of the city we are and everything, it's not necessarily like you can go, well, we stopped residential completely, so we're not going to add anything. It's not like that would somehow reduce what we have to operate on a day-to-day basis. So
we just hold steady.
right,
at
and then we have other problems. Yeah.
and that's to your point, like I said, out of all that net new construction, 50-something million of it was residential, and it was between 100 and 130 parcels. And so if you think about that, all of the now increased services that we're going to have to consider in the next budget.
Right.
So.
Because eventually you get to a point where you have to take another step because you built up that to a point. And
So unless anybody else has any questions on the levy limit part, I'd be happy to answer them.
If
But
I read correctly, I'm not finding it on it. There's a state limit, statutory limit, on the increase it.
the only statutory limit that I know of is the amount. Like I said, there's only a couple of things. There's adjustments that you can make that the city doesn't qualify for. One of them being the expenditure restraint program. But the only amount that we can increase our levy by statutorily is by the amount of net new construction that
Was there a
applied to the
percentage, I
city.
guess is what I was getting at.
No,
Okay,
not that I know of.
okay.
Because I too thought it was 3%.
Somebody said, yeah, I remember
many,
you
many
had said that
years.
for what, but no.
3% was the.
And I'm wondering if you only think that because if you look at this graph, that like the city's expected growth has been 3%, that maybe that was what we've been shooting for, but I don't,
As an alder and sitting on this finance committee, and John K. Howard will say I was probably on here
unless
4
John,
years.
you know something I don't know.
And I would ask that was the maximum was a 3%. That's what I just remember in discussions. You're saying it's not that. I'm going to go with you on this, but I just know that last year's our net raise was what 1.5 or something like that, and that was acceptable even though we had pitchforks coming at us because there were 2 school referendums that people didn't realize about, and then so.
well, considering we've never hit 3% since 2007 at least.
Yep.
Kind of is relevant. If there's like 3% cap there.
If there was a cap, right? So, right. So, like I said, I think we've highlighted a lot of this. We struggle with expenditure restrictions, expenditure pressures, inflation, personnel costs. I did want to put in there, and I wanted this in here so that we can see how important this is when we have a $480,000 increase to our overall budget, which does include the library. But if we commit to a 4% increase to the police department, that's a $630 increase just to the 26 budget. Somewhere there's something that has to be cut. Those are just realistic numbers that we have that we're working with. Plus, you're also committed to a 3% increase for fire, and we're hoping to produce a 2% increase for non-reps. And so those are some significant challenges that I have my accounting supervisor working on as an overall piece, right? He created the police piece for me. But what does the overall budget increase look like at those rates?
So labor is 80% of the city's budget.
Well, staff.
Roughly. Yes, it's
So
staff. Yeah.
We were hovering right around 80.
78.
And if we were at 78 last year, plan on 80 this year, I would think. And even at that, that's pretty much everyone around us.
That's standard.
Yeah, but I would consider us a little higher. I would say, and I could pull numbers, but I believe it's roughly in the mid to lower 70s in a lot of municipalities. And we've always hovered around 74, 75. It's been within the last 5 or so years that we've increased up to about 80. which to me says something too, that maybe the city has to consider some future personnel, I don't want to say cuts, but just changes.
Consolidation.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
considerations and what those things.
I interrupt
Mhm.
some things that went through my mind, and if it's inappropriate, please by all means stop.
I'm just so the opposite. Go.
Yeah, that's what this meeting is
Make
for.
this interesting.
Alrighty, then I'm gonna back up if I could, please. I know we're talking a lot about development. I know there was a purchase of a number of vehicles or a lease of a number of vehicles, like that shoulder vehicle. Wasn't there a shoulder DPW got that grinds up and makes the shoulders instead of running it?
I don't know.
If
Oh,
That's capital.
that was
Vehicle budget, yeah.
that was the vehicle that we purchased. Yes, because every year we would rent it essentially
Yes.
at a rate, and it was cheaper for us in the long run to purchase it on our own and have it all year round than only have it during the street improvement programs. But go ahead.
And to that end, I was going to ask, is there any intent on the residential streets to make any changes that you know? Here I'm adding more to specifically like 68th Street, especially between
No.
like Ryan and, it's kind of hilly and it's one lane each way, there's no shoulder. There's always landscapers parking, blocking a lane and stuff like that, and people walking their dogs. It's just possible to make a shoulder on one side. That would be a parking lane. That would be interesting. Maybe that's not necessary. When I was reading through this, my gut reaction was raw land is more valuable than developed. And if Franklin is the only one that has it, that would be even more valuable. If there's any way to maybe slow down the development, that's probably not going to be well received. Other things that I don't think will be well received at a glance, overtime seems
Overtime is
excessive, and I
excessive.
believe the mayor has already been in conversation trying to address that. Am I misunderstanding?
No, you're 100% accurate.
Here's the part that's really going to get darts thrown at me. Healthcare and benefits. Do the employees pay any portion of that, of the premiums?
Yes.
They do? Okay, because I was going to say most employers do that. I paid a lot more.
Lucky you. I'm not on the committees.
Now we have a very, very rich health plan. We just had a meeting today, but I will say that's been another tough conversation because prior to last year, our employees didn't see an increase in their health for 5 or 6 years, and we got to a point with high claims that we had to give them. And we're not so sure what this year is going to look like. It doesn't look too hot, but we're just not sure at what rate it may increase this year.
With the marketplace now available, is that maybe an option to, in lieu of paying for benefits?
Those are conversations we've had about, are you saying like maybe pay the employee to get off the insurance, get onto something? Those are conversations we've had. It's been in the works though, but yes, those are definitely scenarios that have been talked about.
And is it possible to use attrition at all to eliminate positions? Like when people leave or retire, restructure?
I'm hoping that in the next couple of years, the city really takes consideration on that process.
Now,
The
on
problem,
that, okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, the problem that you have is we have a DPW department that has not seen an increase in staff in what, like 20 years?
18 years.
However, we've got streets increase, we've got, the maintenance just keeps growing. It's
Yep.
not being considered appropriately, not when it comes to the balance of services that are offered and the amount of money to pay for those services. That's where your imbalance is. And we've got a sewer and water that's short positions and has been for a long time. when you look around City Hall, we have people that are functioning in various departments. Like, I'm functioning in 2 departments, actually quite a bit more than that. But so there's really not people to remove from
None.
all of this, and the work is overwhelming for everybody that is here. There's not enough time to get the work done. And now you're talking about reducing benefits when everything else is increasing. You're talking about a 2% pay increase year over year now, where other groups are making more for their pay increases. And you're also talking about looking at the CPI and the pay increases. And this is getting to a point where when you start looking at benefits, and of course we are doing that, but when you start talking about removing benefits,
People get upset.
well, it's not
people
just that.
leave.
Yeah.
That's
People leave.
part of why people stick around. And that's part of why people are taking the public, lower paid piece of all of this than being in a private corporation where you make a lot more for doing the same thing.
And you have to look at this from you have to look at a total compensation, total cost.
Yes.
as
Correct.
opposed to like pay
Right, yep.
or just healthcare. You have to look at the total because, just like anything, every positions, if you're trying to compare them across different industries and everything, they all pay different, right? You get some that pay lower and pay more in bonuses. But it's the total you gotta look at.
And the benefits
And the
are a
risks.
huge part of that. So when we start talking about scaling back, just keep in mind that that has direct impact on the services that we're going to get. I mean, we've got department positions that we've had open for years, and people aren't walking through the door. They aren't banging on the door to get a job. And when they've got people coming in saying, I'll pay you $10 more an hour, of course they're leaving.
But
And
the
that is a problem for us.
Are the
reality of that
positions
is,
posted?
the reality of that is though, like I said, with the spreadsheet, when you are bound by these numbers.
Right.
And you go through your whole budget and say, okay, well, now we've increased our wages by this set amount that we've committed to. We have got our departments running at the rate that they need to be running at, and we still don't have enough money, then what is our options?
Right.
Right?
Because it's either cut or it's we go to referendum for an operational increase. And those are just things that I don't see the city considering. So it's really, like I said, really important. I think the word that I used was being conservative to all the department heads when I sent out the budget email. I'm like, I can't express enough that being conservative is so important. We want you to have what you need to do your job, right? And we know that the cost of everything is going up, and we know that people want wage increases and they don't want their benefits to be messed with. But I mean, this is a very harsh reality.
Right.
So
This will be a
why-
standing. But
Sorry, which is why I was bringing up those difficult
Mhm.
topics.
Yep.
Right.
So have we looked at, so I've had some experience, but essentially, when companies get to a certain size, they do acquisitions and things like that. Part of what they look at then is getting called shared services in place, right? All the common stuff to try to spread it across larger pool, right? Because the idea is every time I add to it, I don't have to double. I only have to add maybe 25 or 30%. So there's a lot of areas in the city, I'll just use IT as an example, right? That are going to have common things that we do that are similar to other cities. The question I would have is not saying that is there ways that we can share some of those resources, right? Is that an option? And therefore we take two groups, combine them, and then over time work to get them, we'll say right sized, right? Over time, because overall those services you don't always have at 100%. They ebb and flow. But the other thing is you may be able to attract and retain, let's say, talent there because you're over a larger pool. You kind of build yourself. You can think about it as you build yourself a consulting practice.
well, we have, like, for example, and I'm not going to go into much because I don't want to prolong this meeting
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
But like legal services,
Yeah.
that's a big one. HR services, that's one that's successfully merged. We're doing it now with the fire department, and we're doing things like that. There's certain things we can't. To Kelly's point, it's either 18 or 20 years that the DPW has not had an increase. That's my number one area to add an employee. I can only think of one area that I've gotten to know in the last 2 years and 2 months that I would, through attrition, not fill a position or two, but then I wouldn't save it there. I would move that over to DPW.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm really gonna put on the bill.
But, I mean, you also have to not just look at the saving a position and moving it over somewhere. That also brings about the fact that somebody's doing something and now we need to have somebody do what that something is. And that's problematic too, because if we don't have an employee in the position that was formerly a position, how are we doing this? How are we pulling these things off with less and less employees?
That's dangerous. That's why it's so weird. We have to look at it. But so, and I don't want to get in a debate with Kelly on this one area. That's for fun time later over Coke or something. But looking at but that's just the reality. So I'm going to yield because I don't want to. I want to, Michelle.
I'm just throwing this out there not to get anyone that's listening to this recorded meeting upset or anything after. I'm throwing ideas out there. But shared services such as combining health departments like West Dallas does with Greenfield.
We used to.
Right.
Many years ago, we had shared services for health. I mean, there's a lot of departments that do more than just an intergovernmental agreement with other municipalities. I mean, there really are departments that have shared services, fire, police. We might be too large for something like that, but it doesn't mean that we can't continue to.
Yeah, I look next door at Greendale, and they have such a tiny health department. You know,
Health
they would
department.
benefit from our, from shared services from us, whereas, is just a thought.
Right, it's a good thought, but it requires a willing and able participant. Like another community that wants to join with
Because
us.
Greendale said they won't. Or we just
We don't.
Yeah.
We haven't really advertised.
haven't-
No,
that,
I
right?
mean,
No,
yeah.
those are all brainstorming options
Yeah.
that we
Right.
do
Right.
have.
Benefit inflation has been higher than actual wage inflation. That's
Very much so.
Big time.
I still don't understand, the other thing I'm just going to throw, this is pennies compared to some of our other major concerns, but I still, for the life of me, cannot understand why we're taking city funds in this city to improve parks in the millions of dollars, such as the pickleball court at Lions Legend in my district, but yet they're used by the rec department, and all the funds that are collected are turned back into the school district when we maintenance them nonstop with our DPW. And there's, over time, yes, it's small peanuts, but over time, that cost does add up.
$400,000 project.
And they're collecting all the money from the profits of those courts being used that regular residents and those in my district not use.
I'm going to be devil's advocate here, though. Who is also running and doing the administrative piece of the rec department?
The rec, but who is maintaining the courts? Who gets the call all the time? Our DPW.
But the school is actually taking care of all of the rec department administrative
We should get
aspects
a
of it.
fraction of those costs.
Does the school
They should
then
be shared.
reimburse for maintenance?
No.
No, not at all.
Nope.
That's my point.
Zero.
Right. No, I'm saying, I get your point. I'm just saying that
They get a call that leaves
You're
are falling
looking
from a
for
tree
everything.
covering the pickleball court, and we go send the DPW out. Maybe on overtime. Go clear the courts for them all the time. I mean, the topic around Kevin Schluter.
It just, to me, seems natural. If somebody's going to get all the income, that they should also be paying for the expenses.
Agreed. 100%.
And to the end with the pickleball court, sorry, but the school used to play tennis there. Didn't they? Somebody had,
Depends. Some have been converted, but
Did they use Freming a lot?
But that's gonna get eliminated with referendum. They're dependent on their approval of natural resource exception.
But the school's not using it. It's
so
strictly
to
the
Jason's
rec
point,
department.
continue, please, Jason.
Yes.
I know where you're going with this. Now. Continue.
Oh,
But
sorry.
they're building tennis courts on property if
Yes.
approved with a natural resource exception. So the other thing is that the middle school referendum, from my understanding, drops off this year. So there's only gonna be one referendum.
I don't think so.
I don't think it
Danielle?
does.
So we checked in that. That was
No,
Two more.
I confirmed with the from me.
Oh, Because I thought
It's gonna be in our newsletter too.
I thought they diffused their.
Unless it was later on, but I think we talked about it, and after that, I talked to Andy Cromie just to confirm on what the actual dates were, because their levy limit worksheet said 2025 for both, and he confirmed no, it was like 2037, something. I'd have to double check what the email said.
It was a 20-year deal.
I had asked him, I said, I thought that maybe you guys were getting out of it early, and he said no.
They were paying off debt. They were getting aggressive with their debt. They could diffuse it. Unless I'm wrong.
One
And
benefit
I can
idea
email
that
that.
I brought up in the past, but it's been turned down a couple times. But the fact is, we provide family coverage if spouse is working even job, employed by friends.
Correct, and that's another thing we talked about.
What we did at Sharp was we offered to cover only the employee and the kids, not the spouse. If the spouse is employed by some other employer, that's their responsibility, not ours.
Freighter to Aurora, everyone.
Yeah, so our rates are individual or family, so it doesn't even matter if the spouse is on there or not. Obviously,
There
that
are
will
rates that you
do,
can negotiate for just
Right.
house plus the kids.
and the other piece of it is obviously that it would result in different claims experience and that sort of thing. I know that that's definitely been something that companies have been moving towards, forcing spouses to get on their own company insurance.
Right, it's not our responsibility.
If it's available.
Now, if it's not available, then you can pick up the whole thing. But-
Right.
But most spouses are working.
Right.
So that's what happens. I mean, that saves us significant,
Yeah.
probably about 300,000. And
I know
the
some-
employees really understood where we were coming from with that. They did.
No, in my head, I'm thinking about the request from fire department, about, they wanted us to buy them out of our health insurance plans to go to their spouse, which is not, does not help the city. So that's what I was thinking of.
Milwaukee County does that. West Dallas Schools does that. I believe West Dallas School District pays up to like $3,500 a year if you choose to go with your spouse's insurance.
So not
But
even
Milwaukee
big.
County is only $500. But West Dallas Schools, I think, was the #1 in the state.
Frankly, if it's only $500, it's worth it.
Say that again?
Franklin Schools does that too.
Really?
Oh,
But you can do it,
That was a big.
and it can be a requirement without paying anybody anything if it's available to them. So why would we pay to have them go off of the plan?
Because you're saving
It's a
all
hell of a
these-
lot of savings.
Right, but the amount that they wanted.
A ton of savings.
Oh, yeah, the amount that they wanted.
Yeah, no,
Ridiculous.
not for the cost of the insurance, that's for sure.
No, 'cause it's all the
Nobody
claims
would
and all
do
that
that.
we're paying also. But yes, those are definitely things that we have discussed. Huh?
Did all the what?
All the claims. I mean, the city pays for self-insured, so.
Right.
Well, I mean, none of these decisions are easy.
No.
You gotta start
But they're
looking
serious,
at
yes.
where you can get some money, so
Yeah.
that's why I suggested it.
Yeah. Yes,
No, and I think
Some money
that's
there that
fair,
we got.
especially if they have a plan available to them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they don't have a plan, then you can insure. I
Right.
mean,
That would be-
that's the way we did it.
Right, yeah, that's the way
If
the
they're working
Hartford
for
did
somebody
too,
else,
at the end.
they're on their insurance.
How do you verify whether or not they have a plan?
The rec department.
Secret investigation.
The mayor becomes a private investigator.
For $3.
So, I guess moving away from the expenditure piece and obviously the revenue, we've kind of talked about that too. Overall, our state shared revenue projection is about 2.4%, which is only a $31,000 increase above last year. I think the city got very lucky and all municipalities across the state got very lucky when 2 years ago, the state decided to offer the supplemental state aid, which did increase our budget by $850,000. Again, this year it went up it'll go up another $31,000, so almost 900,000 additional shared revenue dollars that we have that are eligible with certain criteria paperwork that has to be filed, the maintenance of effort, we have to maintain public safety equivalents every year, and file those by July, otherwise we get a penalty on our supplemental aid. User fees, this is separate from the sewer and water user fees. These are, ambulance fees. I know that we've increased those in 2025. I know it has been a long time coming of updating our fee schedule. That may be something we should really prioritize on considering. Above and beyond maybe building permits, I know that our ordinance allows for building permits, or I should say all permits and impact fees to be increased at the CPI rate every year. But again, those are just changes that we could make, maybe CPI plus another percentage as CPI is starting to slowly decline a little bit. Increasing that percentage, increasing the overall fee structure and what we charge, again, I think is something that we should look into. And the grant funding, I wanted to point that out. Obviously, there's been some halts on grant funding. There's been some scares around. Most importantly, the health department and their grant funding being cut and or slowed down, freezes. Got a couple grants with the police and fire departments that have been talked about potentially being at risk, and what would happen if that was the case. So just overall really determining what sort of revenue we may be able to generate for the city. Didn't know if you guys had any other ideas. Like I said, I know we've talked about them, but if you have any while we're working through this budget, please let me know.
Danielle, I know I came late. What is the size of the deficit that we are dealing with?
I wouldn't say there's a deficit right now because we haven't created the budget yet. The overall increase that we have to our budget is about $480,000. So we have $480,000 to divvy amongst all the departments, plus the library, plus capital.
I noticed, I'm dealing with the system, like the city of Milwaukee, they tag a lot of fees with the water bill. I don't really know how much we charge for water in comparison with other cities like Milwaukee, and how many accounts do we have? What is the chances? How much we generate if we raise the water bill for everyone, $20 every 3 months?
You don't have the authority
You can't
to do that. So the Board of Water Commissioners is the overall authority over that budget, and the Public Service Commission, the PSC, is who sets the water rates. So the city has nothing to do with that.
So they set it for us, and they set it for.
They set it for everybody in the
everyone.
In the
state.
state.
What about do we have the ability? I should have brought a water bill from Milwaukee because they tag a lot of additional fees. Snow plowing, lighting, stormwater management, all these fees, they tag it to the, if you have a house, 1,600 square feet of solid surface, they charge $25 of stormwater management. That goes to the city. For maintaining the pipe system of the storm system in the city.
The only thing that we charge on our water and sewer bill is volume charges, a service charge, and then fire protection.
I noticed when I get the water bill from the city of Franklin, it's a fraction what I would pay on a similar property in Milwaukee. I think we have an opportunity there because raising taxes is not an option for me personally.
To that end, if I may,
But
I don't know that our stormwater goes to the
I was going to say
stream.
the stormwater,
The sewage.
We don't have that.
yeah, the
You're not
stormwater,
allowed.
most of them are required to maintain their own
Yeah.
stormwaters. So you've got HOAs, condominiums, whatever it is.
I get it, but you're basically a house in Milwaukee. There is nothing going to the system. It's just but this is a general charge. There is catch basin in the street and in the city for to handle the storm system, and they charge $25 per 1,600 square feet of solid surface. Like, I was doing a project and I just got, like, it has a parking lot and I have a retention pond, and I got this bill from the city of Milwaukee for $1,200 every 3 months. Not that I'm happy about that, but I'm just like letting you know.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely consider different avenues. The only thing that we essentially charge above and beyond special assessments is garbage and recycling, but we put that on the homeowner and not the renter. I don't know what else we could charge to the resident.
Well, and I think you also have to be careful, because look what happened with the tax assessments being corrected last year. We have a high elderly population here, and they are going to obviously at some point or another firm out, right? And most of them, if not all of them, are on fixed incomes. So you have these issues of, we already have residents that are struggling to afford living here. Is basically what it comes down to. And what you're proposing, I understand it, but it also creates more of a challenge, and we could end up losing residents as a result, and maybe more than we want to lose.
The point, I just don't know what more services the city offers and provides that we're billing for that could be shifted to a tax bill or a water bill. There's nothing. We don't make residents pay for snow removal. We don't charge for storm water management. We charge for an MMSD service charge, but I'm just not sure what other services.
I will tax you a water bill
Yes.
from the city of Milwaukee, and I'm very sure we can benefit from that. And
The only thing I would say is, it doesn't matter how it gets there. If you raise fees, raise taxes, it's all to everybody. It's just expenses
It's
for
more
that.
expensive.
Right.
Right, when City of
Exactly.
Milwaukee did that crazy, the wheel tax,
The
that's
wheel
right.
tax,
I mean, they all know what it is, people pay attention.
Whether you call it a fee or a tax or whatever
Right.
it is, right? It doesn't matter. It's increased
Still
cost.
meeting your
Right.
residents.
And you also got to look at it, the efficiency side of it too. So if you cost, every time you add fees and things like that, you have costs associated with capturing them, all those types of things. The more avenues you have of that, it starts costing you more and more money to pull it and track it and all those kind of things, right? It becomes more complicated. So there is a point at which you got to make a judgment call on which way is the.
Which may be a way for, like I said, we have an overall fee schedule. It's been very evident that our fee schedule is completely outdated.
Yeah.
It's license permits
Oh, terribly low.
Yeah.
terribly
Park
low.
rentals,
So
everything.
it could be a similar, it may not be an easy fix, but it's a get them up to a comparable market rate.
Right.
And then do like we do with impact fees. You increase those on an annual basis. It's a simple calculation and a spreadsheet that
Yep.
increases it every year, and then we don't have to keep coming back or having somebody fiddle around every 5 years to determine.
Yeah.
And
an
the city
increase.
clerk's almost done with my request was, if you are a resident, your fee doesn't go up. But the amount of people that are non-residents renting our facilities is through the roof,
Yeah.
because
But
we're
that's
the
a very
cheapest one
small,
in town.
that's a $30,000 portion of
Right.
our
No,
overall
yeah, we're not gonna-
25 million budget.
But
So,
we're not gonna solve
every
that.
little dollar,
correct, it
right?
does, and that's why I'm
we'll
saying
take
It's
that
going to add up. Yeah. But you find a couple of those and they really start adding up.
the largest pieces are your
If
ambulance
I-
services, which we increase, and our licensing and permits.
If I can add something to the discussion, because I have been working on this property tax issue. State of Wisconsin is the only state throughout the entire nation that rely on property tax for funding local government 100%. The only state. Other states, they have different mixed revenues for, to fund local government, whether sales tax, there's different type of revenue. But Wisconsin, they 100% rely on the property tax. And this is an issue, the reason I talk about it, if we make enough noise about it, to the state, that your finance structure of funding the local government is unfair to the property owners. So this is, I know we're not gonna fix that overnight, but just like a point of consideration.
Okay, can we move on to the
Yes.
next?
Yes, so I think we've touched enough on the budget
Okay.
concerns.
But that's gonna be brought back every month now. It's gonna be a standing item every month.
I can bring it back with some updates on how the budget is going, if I have any,
Yes, every month, please.
yeah.
Okay, apparently there's a request to engage Ehlers and conduct an arbitrage review, which has got to be done.
Correct. Yep, so again, if, reading this, we took out a bond in 2021 for the sanitary sewer lift station, and then also the Hickory Street and stormwater projects. We essentially spent the stormwater projects right away. Or I shouldn't say right away, within 19 months, so we don't have any issues with that, but we still have an outstanding balance on the sanitary sewer lift station where we did not spend all of the funds. We only spent about 90. We only spent about 79% so far. So under IRS rules, we need to engage with, or we should engage with Ehlers to determine if there's any arbitrage that will need to be paid back to the U.S. Treasury due to the low bond rates and the high interest costs or interest proceeds.
Everybody understand what arbitrage is?
Michelle?
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
So Ehlers has put together a proposal that I put in here. They did do one of ours before in the past, so it would be roughly $5,000 to have them do it on this one. And so I'm just asking that we motion to allow us to engage, a motion to recommend a common council to move forward with the contract.
Was there any questions about it? Okay, somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll do it. Okay. Make the motion to approve. The recommendation to council for contract.
Okay. For a second? Okay, then moved and seconded that we recommend to the council engage Ehlers to do the arbitrage review. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, other post-employment benefits. Performance review.
Yes, I know Mr. Howard asked me to bring this forward. It has been a while. So our OPEB trust fund has peaked over $10 million. It's running really hot. We have over $1.3 million in investment gains. This last actuarial review that we had done showed that we are at about actually 114.9% funded. So we've been excessively funding this, and we've dropped down back to just normal costs. We haven't overly funded it for the last few years since we've been in at least 100%. The second page, the graph, is just showing what our investment policy states. The purple line is can't be any higher than 50 to 75% equity, and we've been hovering around 65%. Our fixed income ratio, it has to be between 25 and 50%, and we've been hovering just about 35%, and then we have a very small amount of cash in there. U.S. Bank is our trust investment manager, and they have been continuing to manage this for us. I don't have any other comments at this time. If you guys have any questions about this, I can make sure I'm providing this on a more regular basis. Again, now that the market has started to drop a little bit, I don't see any changes in much.
Funds that very well. One of the few municipalities, government programs that have this obligation, almost more than fully funded.
Yes, and the one thing that I just did want to mention is based on our actuarial study, our determined contribution has lowered over the last few years because we've been fully funding this. But as the next 10 years start to go, we will start to see an increase in the contributions because of the amount of retirees we have in there that are going to be needing the funding. So
Saving a few shekels
right now.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, tax income out district analysis.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this forward because the TID reports are due July 1st. I've almost got those done. So we do have 5 TIDs right now. District 5 is Ballpark Commons. That project plan is essentially complete. I believe they only have 3 properties left that are developable. TID 6, project plan is in process. That's Bear Development. That's more by Irish Cottage, all those Bear Development homes on that part of 36. District 7 is Belo Village. That project plan is complete. Just collect the increments and pay out the MRO payments on that. District 8 is the business park overlay, the industrial park. That project plan is in progress. We've had a couple of commercial buildings develop. We still have a few more in the works that are under development agreements, and then just future development is in the works for that. And then TID 9 is the Karma Labs TID that started in 2023. So, I mean, I hope you guys read this. The only thing that I really wanted to point out in the analysis part was that first note. This has been talked about in the past, both at the Finance Committee level and the Council level, how there was a delay in the assessments and how the adjustment will be received in 2025. The reported value from the assessors on the municipal assessment report is what the state uses to determine tax incremental value. All the assessors had at the time last year was very preliminary estimates that they had to provide. So I show what the reported value was what the assessor provided for those TIDs, and you'll see TID 9 is not there because of the date of creation. It's not accessible until 2025. And then the actual value is what the value came in at. And so the correction value you will see on the statement of changes, which I can bring forward in September. We usually get those first week of September, which will provide a little bit of a credit to the incremental value that the TIDs will receive this year, and then they should go back to normal based on the timing of assessments next year. TID 5 has, we can say it has $90 million in value at this time. Still has outstanding debt, $24.5 million. We have 2 municipal revenue obligations. Neither of those have been triggered yet. And then they will continue to pay a minimum assessment guarantee so long as they don't have $112 million assessed value. TID 6 has $41 million in incremental value. They have $8.6 million in outstanding debt. That project plan determined approximately $64 million overall in the project plan, so they have roughly $25 million to go. We do have 1 MRO obligation with Bear Development. That does not trigger until the city formally accepts all public improvements, so we don't have a date on that. And then again, there's 3 minimum assessment guarantees in TID 6, now 4 starting in 2025 that can be triggered if they don't meet those requirements. TID 7 is our only blighted district. They are at roughly $42 million in incremental value. They have a $5 million outstanding debt obligation. We owe Belo Village, which is now, I believe, Trilogy, a $14.9 million revenue obligation. Those payments started in 2022. I have made the council and finance aware of the issue of the declining tax rate and how at the life of the TID, I don't believe that we will reach the 14.9 million. It's looking more like between 10 and 11. So I did make them aware of this last year, and each year I plan on just sending them a letter with projected future numbers based on more actual tax rates. TID 8 has $138 million in incremental value. We have 1 outstanding obligation for $3.5 million. That was assuming $125 million of projects, but it looks like we've exceeded that. We will need to discuss at some point possible construction of Elm Road. And then there's also some discussions that engineering in the city has had regarding unforeseen infrastructure projects, a couple of them being MMSD projects along South 27th Street, and then some future development in that southeastern corner of the district. And what that will look like as far as serving those MMSD and now Buc-ee's. So we may have to update the overall project plan depending on what the cost is going to look like. So just some food for thought for the future. We have one outstanding revenue obligation that triggered in 2023. However, there was no payments made because that development has to maintain a $7.5 million assessed value on the property, and they're only at 15.2. I did look for 2025 already because that number is out and they still did not trigger it. So last year we had a shortfall payment and I anticipate another one this year as well on that development. And then TID 9, which was created for Karma Labs. They had a $1.8 million GO bond that the city took out on their behalf. We have obligated ourselves to a $1.5 million MRO to them. The overall TID is projected to add about $102 million in development. I did see, again, future or current assessments, and actually that Karma project exceeded what their minimum assessed value guarantee was supposed to be, which is good for both them and for the city. It's actually almost doubled. So that we should see some good incremental value on that now.
We almost lost him.
And then that incremental value will pay off the debt service, and then we will be able to provide that MRO to them. So that is all I have for these. If you'd like, I can bring back the actual overall TID reports to the next meeting. Like I said, they're due July 1st. It'll just be it could just be a more just, you guys can review them, but it's just the overall financials. So this is the wording, then it's just the financial piece that I'll bring forward, and then the council will accept it. So I don't have anything else on the TIDs unless anybody has any questions.
Questions? Okay. Future agenda items?
Want that whole-
No, you'd make a motion after the reports. Go to council. Any future items that this council or the city wants, the committee wants to see other than what I have listed? I apologize for not doing the committee chair and vice chair. Totally forgot. And I guess to me, I'm kind of glad I didn't because there's 3 people not here. So, but I will make sure that that comes to the next meeting. And the next meeting should have I didn't put it on here, the audit results. So I will add that as well. The
That's right.
final audit results, I just was finalizing my review of the draft today. That should be essentially final with the next week. So.
Great.
Just for the next meeting, so just we have the standing mayor's budget update concerns, whatever. Thank you. Just so this
It may not be this in depth, but I can just bring forward updates to everyone.
Yep. Share the concerns.
Okay, if there's no further business, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
My text SFT.
Second.
Not added.
Okay, it's been moved and
I know,
seconded that we
we're done.
adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Oh, don't forget, next meeting, July 22nd at 6.
What?